The lush green vista that Northern Ireland is famous for is all due to steady rainfall, and it really set in as we left Glenarm to continue our drive up the Antrim coast.
As you drive into Carnlough, you pass beneath a bridge. In previous times, this was actually a railway bridge, and it allowed limestone that was quarried in the hills to be transported by rail out to the port and then off to England.
Not far up the road is Waterfoot, a tiny town of only 500 people and some very content sheep who also enjoy this picturesque coastal lifestyle.
Just outside of town, you'll find some small caves. Believe it or not, these were classrooms. And they date back to the 1700s, when the Penal Act made it impossible for Irish Catholics to educate their children, attend Mass, or use their own language. These schools had a hedge in front of them, and hence they were called hedge schools. And in fact, it had a kind of reverse effect. It made the pursuit of higher education part of Irish Catholic culture.
After driving through the Black Tunnel, the Antrim Coast Road takes you through the town of Cushendall before it heads inland, eventually rejoining the northern coast, where one of the real highlights of the drive is waiting.
This is the Carricker Reid Rope Bridge. Now, I've got to tell you, if you're scared of heights, then this is really going to test you. You're 30 metres above the ocean. But the story behind it's quite fascinating. You see, it was created 350 years ago, just so fishermen can get from the mainland to the island and the very best fishing spots. And it only goes to prove just how mad a fisherman can be and the ends they'll go to get the very best fish.
They would actually store their gear in an old fishing shed that sits low on the water on the near side of the island, protected from the fierce winds off the Atlantic.
This is our last stop on the Antrim Coast Road journey, and it's the spectacular Giant's Causeway. Now, as legend would have it, the causeway was constructed by an Irish giant who lived in these parts by the name of Finn McCool. Now, we had a rival across the water in Scotland by the name of Benandonna. Anyway, these guys needed to sort it out and work out who was going to be king of the castle. Now, there was no boat big enough to carry them across, so Finn constructed the causeway out of giant rocks so that Benandonna could come across here and they could have their fight. Anyway, when Big Ben approached the area, Finn took one look at him and thought, he is way too big and ferocious. So he went and consulted his wife, who was a very practical woman, and she suggested that he dress up in baby's clothes and they put him into a hastily constructed crib. Now, when his wife invited Big Ben in for a cup of tea, she asked him to stay quiet so she didn't wake the baby. Now, when Big Ben took one look at the baby and thought, if this is the baby, how big is the dad? I'm getting out of here. So he rushed back across to Scotland, ripping up the causeway as he went so that he couldn't be followed. And today, on the other side of the water in Scotland, you'll find basalt blocks at Fingal's Cave.
Now, the real story behind the way the Giant's Causeway was formed started 65 million years ago. Here in Ireland at the time, well, the tectonic plates had actually cracked open and lava poured up through the top, and it dried very quickly, and it caused that bubbling effect that you often see paint get on a very hot day. Now, those bubbles, well, they cracked around the outside edges, and millions of years later, there was actually an ice age here. There was actually kilometres of ice above us, and it compressed it down, turning the stone into basalt. It's incredible, isn't it, Nev?
What an amazing place. What a great place to finish our story on the Antrim coast.
Yeah, well, it's well worthwhile taking the drive, because when you get here, you'll just be amazed.
Here's an important money tip for you. Down south, the Republic of Ireland uses the euro, but up here, the local currency is the pound sterling, as Northern Ireland is part of the UK. But here's the tricky bit. The banks in Northern Ireland print their own notes, so you might run into problems using your Irish pounds in England. So if you're heading over east to London to do some shopping, make sure you change these into English pounds to avoid any confusion.
Coming up after the break, we head south from the Antrim coast to the stunning lakes region of County Fermanagh.
There are magnificent gardens in Northern and Southern Ireland. How would you like to view these in a small group of like-minded travellers? Botanica World Discoveries has a 10-day tour of Irish castles, manor houses and gardens combined with iconic sites in June each year. Now to secure your place, phone 1300 305 202 or visit botanica.travel.
Getting to the Oyster Festival in Galway might not be as easy as it seems.
Beautiful day.
Whereabouts do you live?
Down at the end of the lake there.
Which way to Galway?
We go past the hotel.
By the gable of a long, abandoned cottage, crippled tree whose apples grew on a branch in Eden.
But if you don't make it, there's always tomorrow.